Well, hello. It's another episode of our Daily Sweepers. We'll take a look at everything, take a look at my notes, and have a dramatic reading of my notes for the things that happened in Worlds today. So, I do want to preface this that as I was recording this, I heard news about Maoan's suspension from Worlds 2021. And it sucks. It really does. Regardless of the fact that there's no cheating, he still broke a violation of it. And that's what happens. That being said, we're going to talk about Beyond Gaming versus Galactasarай. There we go, Galactasarай. As well as later on, Peace versus Red Canids Kalunga. Anywho. Hello, this is Vision Denial. My name is Sam. Today our Daily Sweepers. Let's start talking about the round 1 best of 5s of play-ins. First up, Beyond Gaming versus Galatasaray. Game 1. It's a very solid early game and incredible neutral setups, and as well as contests out of Galatasaray. But vision and wave managements were hard to manage, causing Beyond Gaming to be ahead from mid to late game. That being said, there are poor neutrals and opting into really bad fights when unnecessary, and that allowed Galatasaray to come back from a large deficit and flex their stronger team fighting coordination. Now, Beyond Gaming needs to set up neutrals better and opt out of unnecessary fights. Galatasaray need to improve their vision because despite holding the pace for the majority of the game, Beyond Gaming could move around the map with ease and create plays that shock them. Galatasaray go 1-0. Game 2. Now, these are pretty great games to watch so far. Honestly, it's more of the same from Beyond Gaming but they're slowly improving. There's more consistent early game, some better neutral setups, and great vision. And Galatasaray have also improved their vision denial, and the fact that they are so solid at contesting neutrals and are very well the small margins that are available to egg out any wins is pretty incredible. Galatasaray go 2-0. And thus begins the reverse sweep. Game 3. What a stark difference from Beyond Gaming. Solid drafting pivot, properly using the red side to draft a cohesive counter instead of focusing solely on matchups for the lane. Much better approaches to the neutrals and picking better fights, forcing Galatasaray to make mistakes instead of attempting to fights that aren't guaranteed successes. Galatasaray needs to find ways to answer map plays early and avoid relying on late game team fights to find success, or they will lose again. There's also a need for more aggressive and present vision from Beyond Gaming, or from Galatasaray. Beyond Gaming go 1-2. Game 4. What absolute chaos being embraced the entire time. Galatasaray is trying really hard to be extra proactive, leaving Beyond Gaming to wait and see if Galatasaray will make a mistake or actually succeed at the play. They had much better vision this time around, but the relentless fighting came at the cost of how they approached neutrals, and Beyond Gaming capitalized fantastically. Game 5. The first best of 5 of the tourney, and it's the reverse sweep. Honestly, fantastic performance out of Galatasaray. They started this match very strongly, holding control of neutrals and properly building up their win conditions to close out the series. Unfortunately, it seems like Beyond Gaming also adapted and made the necessary pivots regarding their vision and approach to neutrals to contest every one of them come late game. Coupled with much better laning and wave manipulation during this whole game, it was only a matter of time before Beyond Gaming got the big fight and won. With that, Beyond Gaming goes 3-2 and move on to face Homalife. Now, I would usually, at this point, start talking about how I think Beyond Gaming needs to approach their coming best of 5 going up against Homalife, especially with Chovy in the mid lane. But, of course, their mid laner had to get eliminated, and so Homalife is going to have a free time with either their substitute player in PK is going to likely play in top lane, as that's the only role that he knows how to play professionally, and he has a smaller champion pool. Leaving their current top laner, gosh dang it, their current top laner, Liang, to, take up the reins in mid lane with a very awkward set of champion pools that don't always gel. Now, there is an overlap in champion pools for both top lane and mid lane, but the approach at which you play those in those solo lanes are different drastically. And it leads me to believe that they're going to have to really focus on making drafts that are comfortable for PK and that enable them for team fights. It's not good. Not going to lie. This really sucks from a team that people had high expectations of, regardless of the skill level that was present or not. This is still a team that was likely to make it out of play-ins if there was like better play at the beginning, like a variety of different situations. But it is so unfortunate to see. It really is. And I feel for everybody that's there. Like, what a way to spend 5+ hours in your day working and playing your heart out to make groups, knowing that you have one more best of 5 to do, only for that to virtually be yanked from under your feet. It's disappointing. Oh well. It's also disappointing because Galatasaray could have taken the opportunity to face them. They were very close. They were competitive. At no point did I ever think that there was no chance for them to make it. They just didn't egg it out enough. It's an unfortunate circumstance of the tournament, and it's not by like, oh, these were favorites to win the whole thing, and like both of them got screwed. They're not, but these were still teams with like good prospects to move on further, or at least to make a name for themselves going on, which is unfortunate. I wish that there were, some better approaches to how to talk about this, because I could talk about the really interesting approaches that Galatasaray had in terms of their neutral objectives. They weren't the greatest at putting vision up, but what they did instead is that they made sure that they had pressure in their waves done up so far in, and made sure that their presence was being felt at any given point, and then guaranteed denial. So they never placed their own vision, but they definitely denied it as much as they could. Or like how Beyond Gaming had a very good sense of like when fights would bring them objectives later in. Because it was a really interesting aspect of the series that like it feels really hard to talk about because Beyond Gaming here without Maoan is not going to be the same. It's not. You cannot convince me that it's not going to be like the same in any way. Like I do not I it was already hard to think that they would beat Homolife. I had a world where I'm pretty sure they could have. They were a very well prepared team for best of fives. They're better off in best of fives. Best of ones there is not their comfort state. But they don't have their ability to to play with their main team fighter. Like it's I want to talk about a couple of trends though, at least from this game. The I think it's really interesting to see how teams are approaching developing their drafts now. Where before it looked like very random meandering, there seems to be a much more cohesive idea of like where to focus and make sure that everything else that's picked is used to like amplify that. It's not consistent. There's still some hiccups here and there, and you can tell when like the draft is the biggest difference maker. But otherwise, it is not. It is not what I would say. Like, how do I put it? In no way do I think any of their drafts are indicative of them having a full, solid grasp of what's going on yet. They have a better idea, and they're properly forming drafts that are more consistent to their identity and how to approach the game. But I don't think they have a full idea of what the meta actually is yet, and they're just trying to like build stuff that works more than just randomly picking things for the lane. I don't have much more thoughts about this series, unfortunately, because I feel like the series has become super irrelevant given the news. With that, then I'll just talk about the next one. And next up we have Peace versus Red Canids Kalunga. It's just so fun to say Kalunga. I know it's just Red Canids, but, you know, I can't help myself. So let's go on a way lighter note. Peace versus Red. Game 1. Fight, 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 fight. This is what I want to see from Red. Lean into the late game team fighting and macro movements to close out games. Problems come around when there's nothing but fighting that you undercut any proper setup for neutral objectives that you try on. Peace, on the other hand, just answered the call and doubled down. Having better vision overall helps, but they never utilize it efficiently to outmaneuver or punish Red for their ridiculous engages. Red goes 1-0. Game 2. There we go, Peace. You just need to say no to their fighting until you have more gold and draft ways to disengage and get neutrals around it. They won't know how to navigate around that. Now just fix your wave manipulation and opt into better engage options for your drafts. Red, look, it was cool in Game 1, and a little bit again in Game 2, I'm not going to lie. But this coin flip mentality for fights and leads is just that, coin flipping. Lean into your mechanics by drafting things that enable simple team fights, and then apply it to your setups. Peace. Go 1-1. Game 3. Honestly, the draft from Red didn't leave much to work with. How can you do the opposite of what I asked from Game 2? I said you should do and then you double down on your past mistakes. Peace is actually improving still. Their wave manipulation is not quite there yet, but the neutral objectives are easier to contest, and Red doesn't seem to understand how you're answering things. You seem to be moving around the map in ways that like are catching them off guard. Peace go 2, 1. Bring in your sub and flip a switch, improve your draft, and pace it out. And when they expect it the least, keep up the pressure nonstop. I think it's very clear that the inclusion of Avengers subbing in caused the team to think about the draft in a way that accommodates fights and approach the game with a new dynamic in mind. And I love this because it threw Peace off like very hard. And they tried doing almost the same thing as Red did in the previous game, drafted in ways that doesn't enable their strength, and then have them run to them over and over and over again. We have another Game 5 on our hands. This is pretty close. Red goes 2, 2. Game 5. Oh, what a way to falter. With a whimper. Part of me wants to look at the drafts and still be baffled by the choice of doing very little engage and not trying to enable team fight compositions, when that's exactly what Red excels at. Or this desperate ploy to make plays because it's a Game 5 and we have to win and be ahead. Peace took that and caught you out of position and used that to gain more leads with proper transitions from one stage to the next. And there's nothing here to indicate that Peace played well, like they didn't play incredibly in this game. They had weaker vision, weren't approaching their side lanes properly, and neutrals weren't being set up, just haphazardly started. But because they punished properly when it happened and their wallets were bigger on a better drafted composition, they won. And they deserved it still. Peace was the better team at keeping consistent in their strengths and adapting to their weaknesses. And with that, Peace goes 3-2. And will face off against Cloud9 tomorrow. Now, there wasn't much to write about in my notes for this one. Mostly because, from game to game, I talk about their improvements, but their improvements are micro, or they're macro levels, but they're not, huge. I think the biggest thing, however, is their drafting decisions. And I think this is just a key a theme for this Worlds, is that the meta is not I know that sometimes Worlds people are still figuring out the meta, but at least there's some understanding of what the baseline of the meta is going into Worlds. I feel like no one knew what was going on. People knew what were random power picks, but they didn't understand how that would correlate with overall drafts. Synergies were not quite figured out. They didn't understand what how you should prioritize different roles at any given point. And that'd be fine if it wasn't for the fact that unfortunately the first to play these games when the meta is new, fresh, and uncertain are teams that tend to, historically speaking, be not the greatest at drafting. And so they ended up having to do the safe options most of the time, the vast majority of the time. And I think that doesn't lend itself very well to the kind of things that we would want from it. I would want to do bigger breakdowns of these best of fives, but unfortunately, it's hard to. These are fun. I recommend watching all of the best of fives that play today, but they're a little more difficult to actually engage and pick apart. There's something to be said about the interesting decisions of having to focus on fighting when you don't draft for it because your picks solely rely on gold. And that's kind of what happened in Game 5 for Red Canids. They ended up having a draft that largely relied on gold income and being ahead very early in, and then a series of plays robbed them of that opportunity, especially since they're the ones that misplayed it. And it all just ended in catastrophe, which is to say not a great time overall for most of for what was to be expected a very entertaining series. Now this isn't to say that there's like no quality to these games. Peace versus Red is quite honestly some of the better League of Legends that has been played from all of Playins. These best of fives have been the best of the games so far in Playins. And I think it's probably because they have a better chance of actually like preparing for a specific team and not preparing for random best of one scenarios. And they're able to adapt from game to game, and it makes it a lot more. It makes it easier to acclimate to the role and what it means in the context of the meta, as well as like acclimating to the draft decisions that they make. Because like coaches and support staff are supposed to talk to their players regarding all this, and given the fact that the vast majority of these games were heavily impacted by the drafting decisions, I think that that's not going to go away for tomorrow's best of fives either. Which I guess is where I would say that if Peace wants to win and they're facing off against Cloud9, you've got the better of the two opponents, guys. You will have to face a Cloud9 who have better players role for role, but that have the same weaknesses as Red Canids. Be patient. Focus on a better setup for your vision. Have the time to be patient around neutral objectives. Don't let Cloud9 dictate the pace and match it. Don't ever opt into their fights from their rules, especially since most of the time they're opting into fights that are weak, that are just really bad for them. Overall, what I'm saying is, like, I would not be surprised if Cloud9 loses this series. Either or. If Red won this series, I wouldn't have been surprised if they also beat Cloud9. There's a very real chance based off of the way that Cloud9 plays. And it's unfortunate because Cloud9 is the cleanest at setting up the different steps to be able to get to their win conditions and apply the game to win, and they haven't been there. They just don't set it up. They just don't like capitalize on it. They tend to do random fights that do them harm in the long term. So, do I think they're going to win? No, unfortunately not. Do I kind of want to see it happen? A little bit. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. I think it would be really interesting to see two legacy or two emerging regions qualify and then have two legacy region teams just falter and be eliminated. I think that would be a cool narrative. Have them join the Detonation Focus Me and the teams of "We did it, boys. We're with the adult table." So I think this is where we're going to lead into my thoughts for the day. So, what were my thoughts? So, given the context of both best of fives, I think that there's been a large focus on the approach to draft that tend to be essentially the mainstay and the thing that definitely dictates who is going to win or not. Which is unfortunate because you can tell when a team will definitely be better at team fighting, but then if they pick a draft that doesn't enable their style, it'll make it very hard to want to apply for it, and then just falter to the wayside. I do think that there is also some weirdness about the approaches to neutral objectives. I think it's either not taken seriously enough or that they take it too seriously. There's like a middle balance. What do I mean by this? I mean, like, sometimes teams will throw themselves to get the neutral objective no matter what, When at the end of the day, if you can live through it and contest something else or get a trade for somewhere else on the map, or you're able to delay them, you don't have to like start and engage and fight all the time. And it's really unfortunate because these are all team fighting teams. Like, all of these teams excel at team fighting. Some of them, their primary identity is that, but none of these teams going into Worlds don't excel at team fighting. So, what's the alternative? Well, if you're going to pick things like Camille, Akali, and Aurelia, and there's been the occasional rise, focus on like 1-3-1s. Like, they didn't go away. There was nothing that was done to really hamper that ability. Hell, if you're going to have assassin junglers, that's the better time to have a split pusher with you. Especially if you have a talent. Like, I want to see drafts that, if you're going to pick non-team fighting drafts, that you don't hammer in team fights all the time with them. I want you to do something interesting with it, something different. Hell, especially since the 4 teams that remain have some decent... 3 of the 4 teams have some decent idea about how to approach wave manipulation. Hopefully, Beyond Gaming can muster something up, because unfortunately for them, they're likely to lose, and it looks like it'll be a really quick series and a very unfortunate series. I'll still watch them, I'll still cover them in tomorrow's videos, but it just feels like it's going to be very unfortunate. So the series to watch really is going to be Peace versus Cloud9, and for a lot of people, that's going to be also very quick and painless series to watch. But it's the best time to see something new and innovative to happen. Hey, try it out. Who knows? You guys let me know what you think in the comments down below. Again, thank you all those who watch these videos. It's greatly appreciated. I like putting this time in here, and I like hearing from all of you guys. It's really unfortunate for me that Red got eliminated. I was really hoping they would get far, and I'm also semi-pleasantly surprised by the way that Peace is played. Every year, the LCO, or Oceanic region, comes in hot garbage and cleans themselves up and performs significantly better than expected. And you know what? Yes, I love it. Keep it up. With that, I'd like to say thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.